Welcome to our information session on the Carsey School of Public Policy's Master in Public Policy program. Thanks for joining us today. For today's agenda, we will introduce our speakers, provide detailed program information, offer some potential careers, and introduce today's guest speaker, Julia Vieira. We will then provide a brief overview of UNH, tuition and financial aid, and answer any questions. Please note that you are muted, and we ask that you post your questions in the chat or Q&A box, and we will answer them at the end of the information session. I'm Robin Husledge. I'm also an alumni of the Carsey School in the Master in Community Development program, and I've been with the Carsey School for over 10 years, supporting our graduate students. I'm joined today by our guest speaker, Julia Vieira, who is a 2019 alum of the MPP program, and the MPP program director, Carolyn Arcand, who will be sharing information with you today about the MPP program. Take it away, Carolyn.
Thanks, Robin. So yeah, generally speaking, I'm just going to go over kind of the way in which the program is structured, talk a little bit about the different requirements and experiences that you can gain with the program, and then I'll be talking to Julia a little bit about her experiences with the program and where she is now. So generally speaking, the idea behind the program is that students will gain the skills and the tools needed to create change, understand the policy process, how to analyze policy, how to communicate recommendations. So there's a kind of robust curriculum that students work through with the program. The program can take between 12 and 16 months. So for students who join the program after completing their undergrad, it's typically a 16-month program if you're a full-time student. That being said, if you would like to run the program part-time, we have options for that as well and stretching out that timeline. Though I will say we do have an accelerated option for undergraduate students at UNH. And if you qualify as an undergrad, you can take up to 12 credits that double count towards both your undergrad degree and the graduate degree. And there are some criteria that you would have to meet to qualify as an accelerated student. You'd have to apply to the public policy program with a GPA of 3.2 or higher and have at least 90 credits completed towards your bachelor's before you begin taking those courses that double count towards your undergrad and graduate degrees. So if you are a UNH undergrad and you're interested in exploring that option, feel free to reach out to Robin and or your academic advisor, and we can chat about that possibility. The program is an in-person program. It takes place on our Durham campus. Also, there is an experiential learning requirement that's part of the program and involves going to Washington, D.C. to learn about different career paths in public policy and do some networking with people who are actually doing the work across the political spectrum as researchers, politicians, analysts, nonprofit leaders. So that's typically a high point of the experience for students, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. I'll note as well that within the program, there are 2 specialization tracks, and students are asked to choose one of 2 tracks to specialize in, and that means taking a couple of courses in either of those tracks as part of their program, and I'll highlight those on the next slide. So with the program, those 2 tracks that students choose between are our strategy and communication track and our policy analysis track. And which track you choose kind of depends on the skills that you'd like to take away from the program and where you'd like to go in your career after completing the MPP. So our strategy and communications track, as it sounds, is geared towards developing communication skills, strategic planning, strategic policy analysis, and advocacy skills. So this is a great track for people who want to be spokespeople, political strategists, leaders within, policy-facing programs, that type of thing. And then we also have our policy analysis track, which is more geared towards research skills, so research design and research methods as they relate to public policy and policy making. So this is a great track for people who are interested in some type of career that involves policy research, either working with a think tank, working with a government research institute, working as an evaluation researcher or a data analyst, that type of thing. So I mentioned as well that we have an experiential learning requirement, actually a few. One of them is the Washington, D.C. colloquium, which students typically do in the January term of their first year as a full-time student. So our January term at UNH is a 3-week term. 2 of those weeks involve online asynchronous learning. And then the week in the middle is dedicated to a trip to Washington, D.C., where students meet with between 20 and 23-ish people who are working in policy relevant careers, and just kind of learn about how they kind of got to where they are in their current position, the types of strategies that they use to work towards their goals, the policy landscape surrounding the type of work that they do. So it's a really neat opportunity to see what's out there in terms of career opportunities for folks who receive a public policy degree. A couple of other experiential learning requirements as well. There is an internship requirement, and students are asked to find an internship with a policy relevant organization, typically in the public or nonprofit sector. And we provide support and assistance with finding these experiences as well. The idea there is to gain some experience that will be useful when you kind of make the jump from student to working in the policy field. And then the capstone project is something that typically takes place at the end of or towards the end of a student's studies. And this involves working with a faculty advisor and either a topic matter expert or an organization to design some type of applied research project, or a project that's going to be working with an organization to develop policy relevant skills, to take what you've learned in the classroom and actually use it in the real world in some way. And as I mentioned, classes are on the Durham campus, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of what the program typically looks like for full-time students on the next slide. So again, for students who have completed their undergrad and then join the public policy master's degree full-time, the program can be completed in 16 months. It's a 40 credit program, which entails taking 15 courses. The first fall term, students typically take 3 of our core courses and 1 elective or advanced core course. The first January term, which is that 3-week term that happens basically the first 3 weeks of January, that is typically the Washington, D.C. colloquium experiential learning course that I had talked about before. In the spring of the student's first year, they typically take 2 more of our core courses, and then either an elective or a course that would count towards one of those tracks that I had mentioned. There's also a policy capstone planning course where students think about and plan out what they're going to be doing for their capstone experience. And the capstone work oftentimes takes place the summer after the student's first academic year, or sometimes in the fall after the student's first academic year. And then there are also the internship, which again typically takes place the summer after that first full academic year, and a selection of electives and or track-based courses that take place in that second fall to finish off the program. So yeah, it's a robust curriculum. We cover a lot of ground in terms of understanding the policy process and the role of research in that process, learnings about the role of economics, which is part of that interdisciplinary degree in public policy. Economics is one of those disciplines that has a pretty large role there. Learning about quantitative methods and some skills in quantitative methods that you can utilize as a policy analyst or researcher. And then kind of adding in those courses in strategy and communications. We do have 1 core course in policy across borders, so learning about internationally how policy is conducted and kind of how that works. And yeah, it's a very robust curriculum, but we have some great instructors who come from political science, economics, sociology, public policy. My PhD is actually in public policy, so we have 1 full-time public policy person. So with that, I just want to talk a little bit about the types of careers that our graduates have landed in. So everything from communications related fields to advocacy work, research staff, policy analysis staff, presidents and executive directors of nonprofit or NGO organizations, consultants, elected officials. And on this slide here, you'll just see just a few of our graduates who have landed in different types of work, as an analyst, an account supervisor in public affairs, and a community organizer at a nonprofit organization. So with that, I'm going to again introduce our guest for today, Julia, who graduated 4 years ago in 2019. And I know you've got some information listed on the slide here, but Julia, I just wanted to ask you yourself, could you tell us a little bit about the type of position that you're working in now?
Sure. So currently I'm the Community Development Project Manager for Manatee County here in Florida. I moved a little less than a year ago here. Before I was a city planner for the city of Manchester in New Hampshire, which I got that job right after I finished my master's degree. And yeah, I worked there until November of last year, and then I made my move here down to Florida. And so as a community development project manager, I oversee all the federal funds that the county receives through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for community development efforts. So there are 3 umbrella programs that all large jurisdictions in the United States receive to provide services that meet the needs of low and moderate income residents. And so it's across housing, public services, infrastructure. And so I'm responsible for overseeing these grant funds for the county.
Neat. Thinking about your experiences kind of coming to the public policy program, what drew you to the Master in Public Policy at UNH?
So I did my undergrad in Brazil. I'm originally from Brazil. I did my undergrad in political science. After that, I worked for 2 years in a political consultancy in Brazil. And it was really like a lobbying company, and I was a trainee, and we worked in Congress with the Supreme Court, the Superior Courts, the ministries, and it was really far, right? Like you see the high level of policy being made, and I was really interested in getting more in-depth knowledge of policy analysis, public policy implementation, and that's when I found the UNH master's degree in public policy. And so I was very fortunate to be accepted to it, and it was wonderful 2 years I spent there. So
great. Thank you. Well, yeah, tell us a little bit about, I know about your capstone because I was one of your advisors, but for the visitors here today, could you tell us a little bit about your capstone experience?
Sure. So it was very interesting because I wanted to study, my topic was actually about Brazil, but I found at UNH that several professors had experience working in Brazil. And so it was Professor Arcand, my advisor for the policy analysis piece. But then I had 2 other advisors, a professor from the economics department that helped me with more of the quantitative aspect of it, and a professor from the sociology department who is specialized in Brazil and sociology and different nonprofit agencies that work in Brazil. And so he really helped me with that piece of it. But I was able to, tailor to my personal goals were for my research, and I was very fortunate to have found that at UNH as well. But in general, what I did the advanced statistics track, so the policy analysis and advanced statistics track, which was exactly what I was looking for, because my background was really in more of that political science, not really quantitative skills, and I was really able to develop that, and I use that every day in my job.
Yeah, I think one thing that's neat about that policy analysis track too is that you can kind of hone in on the types of research methods that you're interested in. So there's this quantitative piece where you can take those advanced statistics courses, or if you want to take courses that are more qualitatively oriented, there are options for that as well. And I'm glad to hear you're using what you've learned in your everyday work. That's always nice to hear. And I guess maybe expanding from that, when you think back to the policy program and kind of where you are now, what aspects of the degree in public policy have been most valuable to you, kind of as you've left the program and are now, in the working world?
Right. One thing I was able to take advantage at UNH was you also allow us to tailor, in the quantitative side and get the courses in GIS, right? In geospatial science. And I took advantage of that. I don't know. I think I ended up with that idea in a socio-demographic class as an optional that and as an elective that we had to take. And that's where I learned the power of maps. And so after that, I started taking some courses in GIS. And that was part of the reason why I got my first job as a planner, because I had that skill as well, in addition to being able to analyze policy, have that social demography background that I was able to take in the policy analysis track. And I would say the most valuable thing I learned is the power of agenda, that doing public policy, we have, as policy practitioners, because most of the time we are the ones that make the first suggestion, right, to the elective officials. And so we kind of have the opportunity to set our idea first, right? Everything after that, they're responding to what you are proposing. And so I think that was something I really learned in the policy strategy courses. And I use that a lot as well in my day-to-day work, of being the first one to propose something and then let the elected officials to respond to what I'm telling I'm suggesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway. I guess, is there anything else in thinking about students or prospective students who might be interested in applying? Any advice you have or anything you would suggest?
So I took advantage of everything that UNH offers, right? Not just the internships and the fellowships that Carsey has available. So there's the mandatory internship that you assist us in getting, but you also offer several types of fellowships through Carsey, but also in partnership with other entities. In my case, I took advantage of the fellowship with the New Hampshire Municipal Management Association of New Hampshire. You had a great partnership back then. I hope you still keep that partnership, because that also gave me the opportunity to have that experience in working for a town. And I worked with a town administrator for 5 months. And that's where I learned a lot of, the practice of it as well, from not an elected official, but kind of, right? The head of a local government. But in addition to these professional experiences, I also, took advantage of the incentives to attend conferences through the graduate school. I did the 3-minute thesis, which really understand how to be short and sweet, right? And really
essential for policy.
Exactly. And I feel like that's the practice I had then. It has been key to all my presentations to boards, to the alderman in Manchester, and I have to do many presentations over the fiscal year, and I always try to be short and sweet in and out. And so I think that was another opportunity. Obviously, the GIS, it's like you said with the undergrad, right? I was able to take a few classes that counted as an elective for the MPP, but also now I'm almost completing my geospatial science certificate through UNH as well. And I double counted a lot of these classes. And so there are a world of opportunities at UNH. And I think it's really a matter of, head first.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate just hearing from you on this. And I know, I think, Robin, I'll turn it over to you. I wasn't sure if there were any specific questions for Julia before we move on.
Sure. I do have a couple of questions. One I think is more for you, but one of the questions is to Julia. How did you find your job after graduating?
It was actually network too. Oh, that's another thing, right? That you always offer, both in as UNH in general, there are the network events, but also Carsey has its network event. And the head of the program that I work for in the city of Manchester was actually an alum of UNH, and I met him at one of the networking events. And when I applied, we already had that connection. And so that's how I landed in my first job.
Great story. Love that,
Yeah.
Julia. The next question is, how can one benefit from this program having a legal profession background?
Is that sounds like a me question?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I guess a couple of things. One thing is we do have a joint degree, the MPP JD program for students who are in law school at UNH. And one thing that I hear from them is that the law school program teaches legal research, while on the other hand, the public policy program really teaches about research designed to kind of understand the scope and the context around policy issues. And that's not necessarily something that you learn in law school, but that's something that's really important in understanding the ways in which legal professions and policy experts kind of can complement each other. So having both of those things, along with the specific kind of strategies, communications piece, is helpful to students who either already have a legal background or are planning in the future to get one. They're very complementary.
That's all the questions I see right now.
Great. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Robin. Thanks again, Julia.
Thank you. Thanks, Carolyn and Julia. Fabulous. I just wanted to share a little bit of information about the University of New Hampshire, a Tier 1 research institution, which is the highest ranking, with a focus on small class sizes, a mix of scholars and practitioner faculty, and a learning community with an emphasis on combining the theory with experiential learning, which I think is the best way to learn personally. Next slide. Great. Carsey is a school within UNH made up of centers focusing on applied research, engagement, and advocacy, in addition to offering 5 master's degree programs in community development, global conflict and human security, public administration, and public policy, with an MPP JD dual degree, which is in partnership with UNH's law school. Next slide. As a Carsey student, you'll receive support from your graduate academic advisor, the Carsey Student Success Team, which I'm happy to be part of, UNH's IT services, and extensive library resources and support, including a writing center to assist you with your papers. It's a fabulous center. And the Center for Academic Enrichment, as well as our career and professional success coaches that also help with job searches and resume and that sort of thing. Next slide. Getting down to the nitty gritty here with the cost of the program. The MPP is a 40 credit program, which can be completed in 16 months or 12 months for UNH accelerated master's students. Typically, students start in the fall and complete the program at the end of the following fall term. The Carsey School offers a myriad of education awards, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, different partnerships with different organizations that offer typically around a $5,000 education award. We also offer Carsey scholarships, as well as competitive work-based, which Julia spoke to, MPP fellowships, which typically are carried out in the fall and spring semesters. And that offers around $13,000 stipend payment for the MPP fellowship. Students can also seek out a variety of other sources of financial aid, including federal financial aid through FAFSA. And a requirement of the MPP program is the policy internship, which are often paid at very competitive rates. So that's also a great source of additional income for our students. Next slide. Great application requirements. Super simple. It's all done online. There's a small application fee. You're required to provide names and contact information of 3 people that you would like to write a letter of recommendation for you. Your college transcripts. You can upload your unofficial transcripts during the evaluation period, but once you're admitted, then you need to have the transcripts sent directly from your prior university or universities to UNH. Probably one of the most important aspects of the application is your personal statement, which is really stating why it is you're seeking this degree, what you hope to get out of the program, and what you hope to contribute to the program and the fellow students in the program, and also a current resume. For international students, you are required to provide English language proficiency tests, or if you had your primary education, advanced undergraduate degree in English, then you can apply for a waiver for that. Okay. We are now accepting applications for a spring start. As I said, most students start in the fall, but you can also start the program in the spring if you wish, and that deadline is December 15th. And who do you reach out to? Me, for one. I'm happy to start with me, and if I can't answer the question, I will point you in the right direction to whoever can. I'm also happy to connect you with alumni as well as current students or faculty. And I am proud to also share this role with Ann Kimball, who is our student services coordinator, and she is also there to support you in any way we can and answer any questions you may have. So at this point, are there any other questions? I'm going to check here. I have one question. What does the MPP fellowship involved, and especially the policy areas looks like, and hours per week and that sort of thing?
Robin, did you want to address that, or did you want me to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, if you could just talk about sort of maybe the policy areas. I believe it's generally, again, it's average of approximately 15 hours per week when classes are in session, and it's usually in the fall and spring semesters.
Yeah, and it usually involves working with an organization. I don't have the names offhand, but organizations that are working in policy relevant areas, oftentimes on research oriented projects. So it typically is a great way to complement the coursework that you're doing, or kind of see that you can kind of make connections between the work that you do in the fellowship and what you're working on in the classroom.
Yeah, great. And there was a question about internship, but that was earlier, and I think that has been adequately answered by you, Carolyn, and also you, Julia. So thank you. And I think that's all the questions I see. Okay. Great. All righty. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And if there's any questions after the fact, just reach out to me and I will try my best to answer questions and get you the information that you're looking for. Okay. Thank you for joining us today.